Good morning and welcome to today's edition of the program TVC Breakfast. My name is Etoma Edu.
Well, a very good morning, Nigeria. Thanks for joining us. Of course, we're always excited to talk about things that are concerning our beloved country, Nigeria. There is a whole lot to talk about on the show this morning. I'm Ria Abdul, and of course, welcome to our show.
That's right, Nigeria. Rise and shine here on the TVC Breakfast Show. We've got quite the spread for you this morning. Thank you so much for choosing to join us this morning. We are broadcasting live from our studios in Echo Atlantic. Good morning. I'm Olamide Odekunle.
And of course, a very good morning to each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Are we ready for the conversation this morning?
Oh, yes. And I'm feeling like Lamide must have felt yesterday.
Yeah. Oh. But whatever it is, we will take care of you. Not to worry.
We'll take care of you.
I
Be good. Be good.
I expect nothing less.
Be good.
Have I been bad before?
All right, so let's get into it. Once again, a very good morning to you, Nigeria. Thanks for joining us. You know how we do it. I'll quickly give you a rundown of what we'll be doing on the show this morning. At some point, Olamide will bring us all the headlines that have made it to the newspaper. We get to dissect it and talk about it right here on the show. Later on, we'll be talking about something very, very important. We're talking about safety measures, and we will be having a guest who will join us to educate us on that very important conversation. When we take you all the way to Abuja, we'll be talking about the APC consensus, a very huge one. So make sure you grab your cup of coffee for that particular conversation. And then we come back to Lagos, where the beautiful Olamide will take us through everything happening in the world of social media and more. So I implore you to be ready and enjoy the conversations we're going to have on the show this morning. But we'll start with the story. Now, the United States has identified Nigeria and Lake Chad Basin as critical fronts in its 2026 counter-terrorism strategy, warning that extremist groups operating across Africa remain a growing threat to global security. In the strategy document, the U.S. government said parts of Africa, including West Africa, the Sahel region, the Lake Chad Basin, Mozambique, Sudan, and Somalia have witnessed a resurgence of terrorist activities following the collapse of ISIS, now strongholds in Iran and Syria. The document noted that remnants of the Islamic State and affiliated jihadist groups had relocated to Africa and Central Asia, exploiting ungoverned spaces and weak security structures. The U.S. said its major objective in Africa would be prevent extremist groups from establishing operational base capable of launching attacks against American interests. So this is the conversation we're going to be having this morning. Etoma, I'll be starting with you. Now, we look at the African countries that are being called. It's quite worrisome. And oftentimes we say we need to tighten our borders. This is why we say some of our borders are very porous, and we see things like this happen. We do not want anybody having a camp, where these attacks will be launched, because they don't just affect America as well. They affect, Africa. They affect Nigeria. I'm putting Nigeria on the forefront because we're in Nigeria. So this is what the U.S. is warning us. But what do you make of this?
What I make of it is that when one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, So these terrorists might have come to Africa, especially these areas that were mentioned, the Sahel region, Nigeria, and so on, believing that they have friendlies here. And if they do not have friendlies, it's easy for you to intimidate the people and create a base for yourself to operate, and that is what we're seeing. But you see, America coming out so strong will make you want to ask yourself, are you sure it's just a terrorist that America is gunning for? Or is there something else? Because if you also check the countries that are mentioned, each of those countries have one major resource that America needs. So it's a little bit difficult for you to separate the fight against terrorism and the need to be close to one resource or the other that America needs for its development. So at the end of the day, we'll just have to wait and see what really goes on. Yeah. If you want to take into consideration some of the actions they had in Nigeria earlier on, you will say, okay, maybe they are pursuing terrorists truthfully, but as I said, time will tell.
We can only keep our fingers crossed. But Olamide, we know that years ago, most counterterrorism conversations, they focused on Afghanistan, Iran, Syria. But now we're seeing the conversation come to the Sahel, East Africa. We're talking about the Lake Chad Basin. We're also talking about Nigeria. And we see that it's coming home. It's beautiful that we get to hear things like this, because then we wonder, what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen? And anytime I speak about this, we've been talking about our borders. If we have like a discount when it comes to security, how do we now protect ourselves to make sure that these people do not now set a camp? because these people, they had destroyed their camp. Now they are looking for another place, to start a camp there. And if the people there are also facing poverty and everything, it's easy to convince them and just join them to a whole movement. So right about now, what is the conversation that Nigeria should be having? What is the conversation that Africa should be having to make sure that these places are protected and no terrorists can come and set up a camp?
The U.S. directory on this specifically mentioned ungoverned spaces. And when we look at the concept of ungoverned spaces, that is where terrorists are able to act, unhinged, because the state is not present in those areas. I think the inclusion of Nigeria and the Lake Chad Basin into America's 2026 counter-terrorism strategy tells us, unfortunately, that these countries are now being looked at not in the area of necessarily development or economic focus on us, but almost as a security threat and a place to be protected. And that puts, unfortunately, Nigeria at a disadvantage. We're being seen as something to be helped rather than something to be partnered with. So that is the question that you asked, that how should we have these conversations? We need to reframe the narrative around terrorism. These countries are right to be worried. When we look at the Lake Chad Basin, when we look at where it sits, Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, I believe, it's in a very, very interesting space, because a lot of those spaces are borderless. So it is hard to govern those spaces. It's very important that this country, that America is concerned with us, because when we talk about migration flows, foreign direct investment, they are protecting themselves. But it's time that Africa changes the conversation to being a security threat or a security concern, to being a partner and a developmental, country. It's important.
And Toma, whenever we talk about security, I always say it, once we can, settle the insecurity issues we have in Nigeria, I feel like our economy is doing well. So whenever I hear security, my ears are always, up to know how can we make sure that this doesn't happen. So it's good that the US has said this. But when we also look at these places, why do we have borders that are ungoverned? That's now my problem. Why are the borders not governed? Because this is what the main reason why we see things happen like this is because, there's no security agencies at that place. So a group of terrorists will just come and create a home, create a family, create everything right there, and now start attacking, killing innocent people. So I believe that this is something that we need to take as really, really serious, even though it's coming from the US that once called us a country of particular concern. But whatever has to do with security, just knowing that we've been facing countless security problems in Nigeria, I feel that we shouldn't sleep on it.
No, Nigeria shouldn't sleep on it. And when you talk about ungoverned borders, the reason is that it's really expensive to police your borders. Nigeria is a large country, for example. Policing the borders is like setting up a new agency completely and funding the agency very well. Some countries have gone the way of building fences, to secure their borders and so on. And border porosity can be one of the items that brings that allows for these terrorists to come take base in your country and so on. But collaboration with your citizens is also a reason. So we are not only going to look at the borders, we're also going to look at reorientation of the Nigerian people to understand that Nigeria is the only country you have, and you are supposed to do Nigeria is just like your house.
Exactly.
You are the chief security officer of your house.
Exactly. And when we also talk about intelligence, I feel like this is the right time that we need to work on intelligence as well. I was reading about it, and they said some of the reasons why you see these young people, we see terrorists come and they're easily able to, influence them to join. We look at poverty. We look at some of them that are not in school. So that's some of the reasons why you see these people, when somebody comes and shares an idea to you, you forget that you're supposed to be patriotic, to your country, and you just quickly jump on it.
Absolutely. These countries that are included in America's 2026 counter-terrorism strategy, it's very important that they take the data from this. What this is telling us is that global terrorism networks are increasingly encroaching in Africa. And the question is, are we economically ready? Are we institutionally ready? Are we culturally and socially ready to take on that challenge? Let us take this as a chance to defend our borders and protect ourselves from terrorism.
Exactly, and that's why US has said this. We should not sleep on it. I believe that right about now we should already be putting things in place to make sure that we secure our borders in Nigeria. We do not want any terrorists coming to take place in our home. We'll take a breather now, and when we come back, it will be time to dissect all the headlines that have made it to the newspaper. Don't go anywhere. This is TVC.